how sweet it is to be loved by you.
I guess it's my turn, isn't it? Good morning.
Good morning.
And happy Mother's Day to all of you moms, and happy Mother's Day to all of us, because we're here to celebrate not only our earthly moms, but also our divine mother. And I came across a wonderful story about a mom who came home one day, and she has 5 kids, and walked in the house and everything looked the same, but something seemed a little different. And all of a sudden she realized it was very, very quiet. And so she goes into the living room and she sees all 5 of her kids sitting around in a circle, and then there's something in the middle of the circle, and she wasn't quite sure what it was, so she came over a little closer to see what was going on, and each one of the kids had a baby skunk that they were playing with. And she screamed and yelled, "Run, run, run!" And they all just looked and they grabbed their skunk and they ran out. And she yelled again and she said, "Stop, stop!" And they all stopped. And that day they learned that skunks don't like to be squeezed. But that's Mom looking out for us, of course, you know. Pardon me a second. Anyway, I thought that was a cute story, and I wanted to talk a little bit about my mom a little bit. And so if I may get a little bit teary-eyed today, because my mom made her transition last September, and I'm missing her, and I'm definitely missing her. And I spent some time this last week watching some videos that I had made with my mom, and asking her different questions about where she came from and some of her family history and things like that. And it was just really very touching, very moving for me to really go back and remind myself of, this beautiful, amazing person in my life. And so I'm celebrating not only my mom, but I'm celebrating just the energy and the consciousness of motherhood, as well as the amazing gift that we all have of the divine feminine and of the divine mother. The reality is that none of us would have been born without the gift of the Divine Mother, right? And the Divine Mother is really metaphysically about honoring that aspect of our own nature that allows creation to actually happen. There's no creation that happens without that kind of Divine Mother energy. And it's the essence of what we are really learning how to do, and that participate in the divine creative process in a way that's aware and a way that's conscious. And there are 2 aspects, of course, of our creative nature. One of the things that we know is that humankind is not all between our, as someone said, we're not all between our hats and our boots. There's more to us than just these physical forms. There's our divine spiritual nature, and we are created in the image and after the likeness of this divine creative process. And that creative process is something that unfolds in ways that are not just from a thought level, not just from a conscious, rational level. In Genesis we read, "And God said, 'Let us make man in our image and after our likeness.' And God created man in his own image. Male and female created he them." So if you look at this verse, what it's really saying is God created, then it uses the term man, but that's actually should have been translated more as humankind. God created humankind. And it wasn't until, I'm sure, some years later that it was in our patriarchal world that it was turned into man. But the reality is God created each and every one of us with both these male and female aspects. And it's important for us to recognize that over many, many years and many centuries that the male aspect of our nature has been dominant. in our world. And, that's created some real challenges. It's created some great possibilities in many ways because it really has helped us to move in ways that are forward-moving and really moving us into a world that really has been actually moving us out of some of the places where we've gotten stuck and things like that. But in many ways, it's also caused great harm because the male energy, the male influence, is primarily from an intellectual, rational level. And the reality is that much of our wisdom doesn't come through our intellect. In other words, we don't always have the ability to figure things out. Have you noticed that? And yet there's a part of us that's always trying to figure things out. We talked about this a little bit last week when we talked about this idea of having personal powerlessness. And so a part of our spiritual nature is to begin to recognize that there is an innate wisdom that comes through in our lives that really is more the wisdom of the heart. And our motherhood is really more the heart energy. And the energy of the heart is profound. As a matter of fact, some years ago, I had the opportunity to study at the Heart Math Institute, and I've shared this with many of you. And they've done some amazing research on the power and the energy of the heart. And the human heart actually has an energetic and magnetic field that is as much as 60 times greater than the energetic field that's put out by the brain. And it's actually measurable. It's an electromagnetic field that they can measure sometimes a distance even farther than you and I can see. And they can pick up on the energy and the vibration of the heart at a great distance, whereas our brain, interestingly enough, is really kind of right in this area. So guys, as much as we think we've got everything all together, reality is the feminine energy really is more powerful, and actually tunes us much more into our greater possibilities. And so we are evolving as a species, whether we realize it or not, and we are seeing some signs of a backlash to that in our world. You realize that? The reality is that we are evolving so that we are more aware and more in tune with the possibilities of our unique creative being and allowing that being to flow into and out through us in our world. And there's a part of ourselves that's really wrestling with that because there's a part of our intellect that thinks it's supposed to be in charge, thinks it's supposed to be running the show. Now, don't get me wrong. That's true both in the male and the female species. Don't get me wrong. There's a part of us, regardless, that thinks it's supposed to be in charge. And one of the things that came to me in my intuition, I was kind of in my meditative state this last week when I was contemplating our lesson, and I realized that what I heard was that the Divine Mother never controls. It creates. The Divine Mother never controls. It creates. And so we have a tendency to get caught up in thinking that we need to somehow control what's going on out here in the world. But we really listen to that intuitive nature of our being. It's not to try and control what's going on out here in our world, but it's to create what we want to experience next in our life. And metaphysically, you can see that makes total sense. It makes total sense that we're not trying to make the world fit into a particular mold, but we are trying to really create a whole new reality, a whole new possibility, to give birth to something even greater than the current reality in our life. So whatever challenges that you are facing right now, when we tune into that divine nature of our heart, when we tune in the divine nature of our mother nature, the nature of our Divine Mother, and listen to the voice of our Divine Mother, one of the ways you can tell whether it is something that's coming from your Divine Mother or whether it's coming from the male intellect of trying to figure it out is that feeling of a need to control. And if there's a need to control, it means we're not really listening to our heart. We're listening to the intellect. Now, don't get me wrong, the intellect and the heart need to work together, of course. But what we are learning as we grow spiritually is that the intellect needs to give way to the wisdom of the heart. Our lesson in the quest this week is really about surrendering. Last week we talked about personal powerlessness, and this is kind of a continuation of that. And part of our spiritual unfoldment is learning how to let go. It's surrendering. And we're surrendering to that part of our nature that has a higher awareness, a higher wisdom, and that is vibrating with an energy that's moving us in an ever progressive spiral of greater awareness of our good, of our divine nature. And as we're dealing with different circumstances in life, what we find is if we will take the time to stop and not necessarily always try to fix or figure out what's going on, but really tune into listening to that heart energy and that place within us that has a connection with the higher wisdom. And what we'll find is that we get little insights and little awarenesses that move us in a particular direction that unfold in ways that we probably could never have imagined. And there are things that can happen in our lives that are beyond our ability sometimes to even comprehend. And this is the world, this is where the energy and the conscious, this is where miracles really happen, in all honesty. And the only reason they're miracles is because the head can't figure them out. Does that make sense? But there's something that happens beyond our intellectual, rational ability to comprehend how that works. And there are principles and laws that are at work that we are participating in when we let go of that sense of a need to control what's happening in our life and open up to a greater creative principle that comes through our heart energy, that comes through the heart awareness. There's been kind of in some ways in our culture, there's been kind of a separation between our male and our female nature, between our rational, logical sense and our intuitive, more feeling nature. And it's really one of the things that's created one of the biggest challenges in our world, and that is there has been a suppression, you might say, of our unique divine feminine nature. And of course you see that actually in our culture. There's been a suppression of women in our culture. I don't know if you guys noticed that or not. I mean, I know you ladies have. But there's been a suppression of that. There's been a fear of it. And the fear has been, in all honesty, of not being in control. But one of the things that's happening, I see, actually not only in our culture, but I think happens as we begin to evolve ourselves individually, spiritually, is that we are learning how to let go of that need for control and really step into the energy of our power. See, there's a difference between control and power, isn't there? And interestingly enough, the need for getting control is really the fear of losing it. Make sense? And the moment that we let go of our fear of needing to have control, what we find is we tap into an energy that really has to do with our own unique power. Dr. David Hawkins talks about this in terms of the difference between force and power. Force and control, you might say, in many ways are synonymous. When we try to force a particular circumstance or situation in our lives, we're not really listening to that energy of our Divine Mother. We're listening to the intellect that thinks it has to control. And so when we can learn to recognize that control is not where the power is, that we can actually tap into a greater energy and a power that is beyond the intellect. I believe that we're seeing an evolution in this country. We're seeing a backlash, certainly, of those who are really invested in having control and having power and having it from a male-dominated, rational, logical, or even illogical, some of it, most of it, kind of understanding. But I can tell you, there's an evolution that's happening, and you can hear it in the voices, and you can hear it in the people. And I think it's more than just an outward expression. I think it's not just a revolution that's coming. There's an evolution that's coming. And we actually are all participating in it, whether we recognize it or not. We all have the opportunity to allow a greater wisdom to unfold. And it's showing up by more and more women showing up in willingness to step forward and be the leaders that they are and can be. And men freaking out about it, in all honesty, because they think that they're somehow losing control. Guess what? Control is an illusion. Reality, the moment you think you have to have control, you're in an illusion. Because the illusion is that somehow you individually, as a personal, unique being, have control over what goes on out here. What we don't have is control. What we have is creativity. We have the ability to create the next evolution, the next experience, the next possibility. But we don't have the ability to change what already is. And if you don't like what already is, if you think trying to control it, guess what? Interestingly enough, you get caught in this little spiral of trying to change what is, and you actually wind up creating more of what is because you're putting more energy into it. Thoughts held in mind produce after their kind, right? So it's this non-resistance that we're talking about. And Jesus talked about this, really. It's one of the most profound things, I think, that Jesus taught us, is just not really trying to resist what is, but being open to creating greater possibilities in life. And so we're talking about the energy and the consciousness of non-resistance. Interestingly enough, sometimes people have a problem with this idea. They think that somehow it's passive, somehow it's weak, that sometimes that surrendering is giving up. And I'm going to suggest to you it's the other way around. It's called allowing. And there's no greater force in creation than the force of allowing. That's what true surrender is. It's not giving up. It's allowing something more and something greater to come through. And so when we work with this kind of idea and understanding within ourselves, both those who are in physical male forms and those who are in physical female forms, allowing a greater potential and possibility to show up for you, rather than trying to get whatever is happening to be different. Moving that and just shifting into that consciousness and that energy of what's the good that's possible through this circumstance or situation, through this experience. And then taking those inner steps to listen to that heart space and listen to the guidance that you get of any actions that you need to take to help bring that about. So it seems like a simple difference, doesn't it? But I think it's pretty profound. I think it's very profound. And so when you really think about giving birth, you have to ask yourself the question, what is it that I'm choosing to give birth to in my life this day? And you can tell by, one, what am I holding up here? But even more, what am I holding in here? And bringing those two together in an energy of light and of power and of passion, of love, of compassion, of nurturing, of caring, brings forth our greater intuition. It allows our intuition to really work. I'm absolutely convinced that women have much more attunement with intuition than most of us guys do, to be honest. I learned more about intuition from my mom, who was amazingly intuitive, She was actually thought to be psychic. She didn't like that term or like that idea because she was raised Baptist and she thought that was bad. But every now and then, the psychic would come out and And I remember she was raised in the Methodist church. And she was raised in the Baptist church, but when she married my dad, she became a Methodist. And they had a carnival one time at the Methodist church, and they were doing some fundraising like we do sometimes here. But they had a talent show or a fair or something like that. And my mom decided that she was going to dress up as like a gypsy and do card reading and palm reading. And so she started reading up on reading palms and thought, well, that would be kind of fun. She did it just as a lark, just something fun to do. And people began coming to her in this thing, and she would start reading their palms, and she was predicting things for people, and weeks later they were coming back going, oh my God, what you told me was amazing. It's exactly what happened. Well, my mom, I always ask her about that, and she said, well, to be honest, I don't read palms, I read people. I can see what's going on with them, and I can see where they're headed, and I can see what's coming. And I went, wow. So she really had an amazing intuitive ability that she didn't talk about a lot, because she was raised that, that wasn't okay. But I'm telling you, that's something that's within every one of us, and it can be developed. And as we listen more to that inner space with our hearts, I remember a story from my first wife, Kathy, and thinking about mother's intuition. And Kathy was visiting some of her relatives out on a farm there in Arkansas, and they were visiting in the living room, and our son, Michael, was about three and a half, something like that, very young, but it was out in the country. They had a fence around the house, and so they were allowing Michael and some of the other kids to play. Some of the other kids were a little bit older, and they were just allowing them to play outside. And Kathy was inside, and they had some of the older kids kind of watching Michael, and Kathy was inside talking with her relatives and having a nice big conversation, and all of a sudden she just had a sense, a feeling of something, that something wasn't right. And she didn't know what it was, but she knew that she needed to go find Michael. And so she ran out of the house looking everywhere and couldn't find Michael anywhere. And just was, Michael, the other kids were off playing because they were older and didn't necessarily want to be bothered with this 3.5-year-old. Michael was not there. And she, started to panic, but then she just calmed down for a second and listened. Where is he? And I asked the question, where is he? And she saw a very clear image of Michael over this hill, this really big hill, and surrounded by horses. And so she ran up over this hill, and she said it was a big hill. And she ran up over this hill and looked down from the hill, and there in this meadow, just down a little, not very far from the house, but over the hill where she couldn't be seen, she runs down, and sure enough, there's Michael, and he's surrounded by these horses. And they're not necessarily happy that he's there. And, some of them were kind of bucking up. And so she ran and shooed them off and managed to get them away from the baby. They didn't know what this thing was. They didn't know what this little creature was. And so they were concerned about their little ones. But she revved up Michael, and he was safe. So how did she know where he was? She just instantly saw and knew. She knew that there was something going on, and she knew that there was a problem, and she also got a clear vision of where to go and how to help. I kid you not, I'm absolutely convinced that there is an amazing psychic ability between a mother and a child. There's a connection. And I'm going to suggest to you that connection is actually representative of the connection that you and I have with our Divine Mother. Because our Divine Mother is always looking out for us that way. Is always looking to take care of us. There is this motherhood of the divine that is always there to hold us, to find us if we wind up getting lost, to run over the hill and find us and protect us, to look out for us. There's this unique divine energy that is the Divine Mother. It's not in control of our lives. It's not, interestingly enough, it's not controlling, it is creating. And it's creating in and through us as the divine energy of creation, of love, of care, of compassion, of brilliance. It's the greater possibilities that are in every one of us. And in order to experience that, we have to be willing to surrender this idea, this belief system that says that the intellect is running the show. That's not always an easy thing to do, is it? We think we've got to figure stuff out. But I'm going to suggest to you that it's already being figured out, but not here. Here and through that divine mother that exists in our universe and is always working to take care of us in some way. So whether your mother is, I know one of the things, there's a tradition for many years, when people come to church, and if your mother is living, then they usually gave out a red flower. But if your mother has died and made their transition, there's usually been a white flower. And I chose to give all of the moms a red flower because the reality is I'm convinced that all our mothers are still very much living. Not just on the spiritual plane, but they're living as a part of our own nature. They're living as a part of us, and they're living in our consciousness as that power to bring forth even more life. So I want to take us through a little ceremony today, and I'm going to ask for some volunteers. And I'm probably going to need all the gentlemen to help out with this, so I'm volunteering you. I need 7 of you gentlemen to step forward and be willing to honor not only your mom, but honor the Divine Mother and the Divine Feminine. Could I ask you guys to step forward? Come on in. And then I'm going to ask for volunteers. I'd like to invite 7 women, mothers or not mothers. Everyone has a mother, right? Whether they're living or not living. So I'm going to ask you gentlemen to line up right along here. And I'll ask you all to face to your left. You're going to stay down, so that's fine, Roland. Thank you. I need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Perfect. And so I'm going to invite you to put a little space between you, and I'm going to ask for 7 of the women in our group to come forward and to participate in a healing ceremony. Would you be open for that? Sure. Let me give you one of these, and I'll tell you when to start reading. Yes, please pair up with the gentleman.
It's me.
Hi. Here you go, Roland. Now, I think in order to really capture this, I'm going to ask that not only that all the gentlemen to face to the left and move back a little bit, spread out a little bit, and ask the ladies to step in between and face the gentlemen so that you're actually turning this way. There we go. You see what we're doing? Yeah, I think you can see a little better that way. And so I'm going to ask all you gentlemen, would you be willing to serve as a surrogate for all men in our universe? Would you be willing to serve as a surrogate and as a symbol for all men in our universe? And if you will, say, yes, I will. I will. Yes, I will. Thank you. And ladies, would you be willing to serve as a surrogate to all women in our universe? Yes. Wonderful. And so we're going to start on this end, and I'm going to ask you Mark to start off by reading the very first part, the paragraph.
I honor you as the givers of physical life.
And then read the paragraph there.
Thank you for agreeing to become a vessel to bring forth new life on this earth, caring for children lovingly, providing a spiritual base, recognizing and nurturing their unique being and individual path, accepting the lifetime commitment of love and care, and recognizing that your children will always be a part of your life.
If you'll read the next one.
I honor you as the caregivers and nurturers, as teachers, nurse, counselors, ministers. You care for the health and well-being of others from the goodness and generosity of your heart. You nurture their growth, their connection to spirit. You support their learning in daily life and during times of challenge. You have chosen this path of contribution.
If you'll read the next one.
I honor you as the pursuers of knowledge and intelligence. With the marvelous willingness to ask questions, you boldly seek information, search out answers, open yourself to new perspectives and greater knowledge. You don't hold back. You go ahead and explore uncharted territory, challenge current wisdom, and create new understandings that open the world for the rest of us.
I honor you as the earth mothers, gardeners, and soil caretakers, honoring the earth that brings forth the abundance and beauty of life around us, the flowers, the trees, fruit, and veggies in the core of your nature. Your understanding is the gift that the earth is, and recognize all it brings to our lives. You treasure it and watch over it and remind us of its sacredness.
I honor you as the protector of the waters. From our earliest moments, all of us are nurtured by the waters of the womb. Our body is over 90% water, and much of our world is covered by the waters of the oceans, lakes, rivers, and streams. Water is life-giving, life-producing, nurturing, and cleansing. You recognize it as a force of nature that supports us and supports life.
I honor you as the visionaries. We honor the ability of women to look out and see the possibilities, to recognize the vastness and limitness of the skies, the magnificence of the sun and the moon and the stars, to recognize the invisible as real, to bring forth fresh insight like a cool breeze that calms us and expands our world.
I honor you as a wise wild woman. With many years of experience, challenges and triumphs behind them, they have the courage to trust the voice within and act from this inner wisdom. They listen and perceive. They receive others as they are. They speak their truth. They act from their heart. They let their soul be seen. They dance with exuberance and live to the fullest.
And if you don't mind, let's give each other a hug and a thank you. And so, go ahead and be seated. Thank you. Thank you for honoring and being honored, and for taking in the energy of both giving and receiving of a blessing. And we bless all of you who are mothers, and we bless all of you who have mothers, for that matter. And thank you for letting that creative power be in your life as you go through different circumstances and listening to the energies of the heart. Let's move into our meditation time.
Oh, Mother God, flowing through our hearts, we give thanks for the bread of our lives, for the hands in the earth and the fruit of your womb, O Mother God. Blessed be, O Mother God. Blessed be, O Mother God. Flowing through our hearts, we give thanks for the bread of our lives, for the hands in the earth, and the fruit of your womb, O Mother God. Blessed be, O Mother God. Blessed be, hey, O Mother God. Thank you for this day, for the love that you wash over me, and this joy in my heart I will share with the world, oh Mother God. Blessed be, oh Mother God. Blessed be.
So let's just take a nice deep breath and breathe into the heart space. And as you breathe into the heart space, just notice if there's any mind chatter going on. And just send love to the mind chatter. And just say, thank you. You can rest now. You can let go. Peace. Be still. And letting go of that feeling and that need to be in control allows a greater power of the heart to inspire, to uplift. I relax and I let go. And I let the Divine Mother speak through my heart. Let these words be your words. And let the energy and the feeling of care and compassion and creativity open that heart even more. Open, open, open. Opening to the creative power at work. And give thanks. Give thanks for the fruits of the creative power at work in and through us. Thank you, Blessed Spirit. So it is. Take another nice deep breath now. Let that celebration of the divine feminine resonate through all your being. Take one more nice deep breath, and when you're ready, gently open your heart and your eyes and be present here and now. And so it is. We at Unity in the Heart of Austin are committed to inspiring people to awaken to their unique divine nature through spiritual teachings, through heart-to-heart connections, through prayer, and through sacred service. And we provide tools, spiritual tools, that allow you to live your best possible life. I'm Reverend Tony Roebuck, minister at Unity in the Heart of Austin, and I truly hope that you are inspired by and that you are transformed by, you enjoy this week's spiritual message. And if you would like to leave a donation, a tithe, to help the work of this ministry in supporting you and others like you, then we are truly grateful for your generosity and for helping to make the world a better place. Because we know that life is meant to be good.